Is the city of Houston headed for hard financial times, and what can be done about it? Just one topic on Houston Newsmakers. Two candidates for mayor accepted my invitation to talk about their solutions to what could be a major financial problem for the country's fourth largest city. We'll talk to one city official who implemented a plan that seems to have saved the city millions of dollars, with more to come. And a 3-year-old child was killed last week after police say he got a gun that his grandparents had not stored properly and shot himself in the head. Other Houston area children are being placed in harm's way as well. The Escape Family Resource Center is one answer to that problem.
From KPRC Channel 2, this is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
And good morning and welcome to Houston Newsmakers. Joining me this morning, candidate for Houston Mayor, former Congressman and City Council member Chris Bell, and candidate for mayor, businessman Marty McVeigh. Thank you both for being here this morning. I appreciate you coming in. I just want you to know I invited the candidates on short notice, really, to come in and talk about the report that came out this week about Houston's finances, that it could be in trouble in the coming years. This, along with a published report from the city finance director, Kelly Dow, predicting a $126 million deficit the next budget year. The question is, how do we get to this point and how do we solve it?
Well, we got to this point because we have set ourselves up for failure along the way. And we passed a revenue cap back in 2004 and said that it wouldn't take effect until 10 years. And so that has to be factored into any future analysis. And the pension system that we have, primarily the firefighter pension system. And those are giant financial issues facing the city of Houston.
How do we solve it?
Well, there are a couple of ways, I think. First of all, I think it's very disingenuous for when you talk about the pension issue to try to suggest that you're going to be able to cram a solution down the throats of Houston firefighters. You're not. I think the Houston Chronicle is correct when they say the next mayor is going to have to employ a large degree of diplomacy and sit down with the fire department, firefighters, and help them recognize that the current plan is not sustainable, and try to work something out that we can live with, and then go to the legislature where it's controlled. As far as the revenue cap is concerned, I'm on record of saying that it needs to be repealed, and I think the mayor is going to have to lead in that direction. And if the political will in there to get rid of it altogether, I think that you look at making an exception for public safety, which is more than 50% of the budget.
Marty, you deal with financial kinds of things all the time. This looks like it's right in your wheelhouse. How do you solve this issue?
It is in my wheelhouse, and I look at this as just, quite frankly, there is no political solution here. This is a management solution that must be brought. One of my opponents has consistently said that the city doesn't have a revenue problem, it has a spending problem. And quite frankly, that's not accurate, because if we had a spending problem, we would have great streets. We would have the best of everything in Houston. So that's not the reality. The reality is that more and more people are coming to this city, so the city will continue to increase its spending. What we need to do is to find a management solution here, and the first step is to, when you find yourself in a financial hole, the first thing you do is stop digging to get out of that problem. So we need to look to bond out our debt, in particular the pension debt, and move forward and not make bad deals in the future like was made with the firefighters pension fund.
Well, one of the things that added fuel to this conversation is a release of Moody's Investors Report, and it says the city's outlook is negative, with the ongoing outlook is negative. $3 billion in outstanding debt. The report indicates that the reason for the negative outlook is not a mystery. They say the outlook revision to negative reflects the challenges the city faces from growing pensions, costs, and liabilities. Specifically, the unfunded liability is about $3.2 billion, with fixed costs equaling 30% of the budget. Translation, something's got to give. How do you deal with that without, you got legislative, do you have to go to legislative?
Well, you have to go to Austin, and that's why it's disingenuous to try to suggest that the mayor can come in and just wave a magic wand and fix it. You've got to try to get the firefighters to come to the table and try to come to some type of agreement where they can recognize that this current plan is not sustainable, and you can't just keep kicking the can down the road. At some point, something's got to give.
Well, if you watch what's been going on over the last few years, what's been done that you would do differently, and how would you change that dynamic so that the pensions get changed along the way, or something happens so you don't have that fixed income or fixed revenue?
I agree with Chris on this issue. The city has continuously kick the can down the road. And we cannot no longer do that. We continue to burden the next generation and the next generation with our financial debt and our mismanagement. We cannot continue to do that. When we talk about bonding the city's debt out and moving forward, that's the point that we need to negotiate with the men and women of the city of Houston that depend on the pensions, not after we've already received their services.
What can you do, both of you, that hasn't been done already? You've seen the negotiation process up to now that hasn't seemed to work, really.
Well, I think, you know, I talk a lot about the fact that having served in Congress, having been the candidate for governor, having served on city council, I certainly see the way different branches of government, levels of government intersect and connect. And I think it's incumbent upon the mayor to immediately start sitting down with members of the state legislature and really pushing forth the importance of this issue so that they will be on board as well in recognizing that the current path isn't sustainable.
Do you think the cap, the revenue caps that are in place now will have to be changed up to this point? And we're going to do, will taxes have to be raised in some way, shape, or form to help alleviate this problem, either one of you?
Well, one thing I disagree with Mr. Dow on, I mean, he's suggesting that there are no more city assets that could possibly be sold. I think that there are other assets that we can look at. If you look at what other cities have done to try to bring some relief to their financial situation, they found some pretty clever avenues to go down. So that's something to look at in the future. But as far as the revenue cap, a mayor has to lead. And this is one issue, if it's not on the ballot this November, that the next mayor is going to have to be willing to push it forward and either go back to the public. The electorate now is very different than it was back in 2004, and emphasize the importance of doing something about the revenue cap, either just in the area of public safety or repeal it altogether.
You ready to do that as well?
I am, and I think that it's clear that there is a lack of leadership in this area. We cannot continue to do the same practices over and over again and expect different results. We need leadership. We need a different style of how the city is run and operated. I think that there's ways that we can look for efficiencies within city government and able to move it to different areas that will ensure our growth and success. Growth, let me just finish with this, that the city is growing by thousands of people per month, and that growth has to be managed. And right now it's not being managed. So that's our future. Is we want to continue to bring people to the city, we want to continue to bring business here, but without having a good financial footing, we're not going to be able to sustain a sustainable growth.
We should be benefiting from that growth. We are growing, and we've had incredible economic prosperity here in the city of Houston, but meanwhile, the city is not benefiting from that growth and prosperity, and that's why things must change going forward.
About a minute left. Rebuild Houston hasn't been working too well. I mean, the voters said in 2010, we want that, and now it's in the courts. Maybe the wording hasn't been right. Better ideas from both of you about how to fix this issue with Rebuild Houston in terms of what it was intended for?
Well, it's certainly time to take a very close look at it and audit the program, depending on what the courts say, if the program can even go forward. But people thought that they were voting on a drainage program. And then when you look at how a lot of those dollars have been spent, there are some significant questions that have been raised, and people deserve to know where their money has gone.
I think that the formula on Rebuild Houston is wrong. 30% of the monies that are captured in Rebuild Houston needs to go to the neighborhoods for neighborhood improvements. The city is made up of a collection of neighborhoods, and without improving our neighborhoods and places like Meyerland and others that have continual flooding, we're not going to be able to progress and have good, strong financial systems.
And you can appreciate that living in Meyerland and having been flooded.
Well,
so
and people want answers.
Yeah.
And people wonder why we just had a giant rebuild program and we saw 3 feet of water come into it.
I thank both of you for coming in to talk about this issue. It's good, and we'll talk more as this campaign goes on. We'll have you come back. Is that okay?
Thanks a lot.
And you're not in a group of 7 guys, so that's a good thing too, huh?
We get a little more time.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Cam.
There are obviously elements in the city that are doing quite well. One of them has to do with the city health care. Houston's director of HR is credited with saving the city millions. How's he doing it? We'll ask Omar Reed next when Houston Newsmakers continues. And welcome back to Houston Newsmakers. We were just talking about some of the dire predictions for Houston's economy in the previous segment, but City of Houston HR Director Omar Reed has a different story. Welcome, Omar. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Cambrell. Well, I'm happy to be here today.
Full disclosure, Omar served on the board when I was chair of Big Brothers Big Sisters. That was when we were both children several years ago.
Absolutely.
Sorry to say we didn't use you in the HR capacity at that point in time.
It's okay.
Clearly, it's worked well for you. I've been reading a story about the city's been saving millions of dollars through the HR program that you've put in place. How has that happened?
So, Cambrell, in 2010, the city was in a tough economic environment. We had a budget deficit, and we certainly saw unsustainable health care costs. Actually, when the mayor was elected, she said that the two things that were unsustainable, one was pensions and one was health care. And so in 2010, we started looking about trying to come about a solution to our health care problem. And one of the things that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out is that healthy people cost less than sick people. And so one of the things that we started to do was we started to say, how do we keep people healthy inside the city of Houston? And we started a very robust wellness program in 2011.
And so the people started to get on board with that, and it was amazing success right off the bat, right?
Absolutely not. It was not successful at all. Well, the desired effect took place at first. One of the things that we needed to start our wellness program was data. And so in 2011, we started this very deliberate process where we started asking our employees to take a biometric screening. That biometric screening information started to roll back into us, and amazingly enough, we found employees who had health care challenges that they did not know about. We found people who had stage 4 cancer. We found people who were diabetics. But what that allowed us to do, Cambrell, was in 2011, 2012 to start putting in some maintenance programs for those people and start getting them some treatments that have been very beneficial.
So the first year didn't work well in terms of finances. It cost you more money because you start finding out about these people. But then after that, the wellness part of it, you started having people who are healthier, it cost the insurance companies less. So you get charged less as a city as a result of that, correct?
Absolutely. So the model that we have is a self-funded model, which was very important to our success. One of the things that you hear about in today's medical environment is something called fee-for-service. Fee-for-service means every time you go to a provider and you have a service rendered to you, they charge you a fee-for-service. One of the things that we have right now is a capitated arrangement with Kelsey-Seybold. Kelsey-Seybold capitated arrangement means that we have a group of services that are covered for our employees, and that capitated model has worked very well for the city of Houston.
This city of Houston model is very much like what corporate America uses in a lot of different capacities, right? So it's unusual for a city to take on that. I mean, it's not something, it wasn't in place in Houston.
It was not in place when we got there, Cambrell, and it is very, it was new for the city of Houston. It was not new for a lot of cities around the country. What we've done, though, is we've done it on steroids. So a lot of organizations, a lot of cities done it, have it in place. But what we've done is we've taken it to the next level in partnering with groups like Kelsey-Seybold and others.
What is it now, as a result of what's happening over the last number of years, what are your projections going forward? Did you see continued?
Yeah, so Cambrell, we've seen some phenomenal results as a city of Houston. Right now, and I just looked at the financial reports before I came over here today, over the last 4 years, we've saved over $47 million of taxpayer dollars and employee dollars to the city of Houston. Our healthcare trend back in 2010 was about 10% per year. So let me give you the picture. We were spending about $300 million per year in 2010. About 10% per year was our healthcare trend, $30 million per year. Our healthcare trend over the last 4 years is 1.4%. Wow. And so we're very excited about that. And that's how we've seen some of this $47 million that we've been able to save as a city.
Well, with all the news that's not necessarily all that positive about the city finances at this point, you've played a pretty big role. You got to be pretty happy about the way you and your staff and council who approved all of this have made this happen.
Cambrell, this has been a team effort. I get to sit on shows like this, but there's certainly people back at the office, council members, the mayor. There's a bunch of people who actually actually get credit for this. I'm sort of the cheerleader out front, but the people who really did a lot of the heavy lifting are back at the office today.
Now, your position is appointed by the mayor?
Yes, it is.
Now, the mayor is going to be out this year. What does that mean for you? Are you going to plan to stick around, or are you going to do other things?
Cambrell, I'm not sure you're supposed to put me on the spot like that on this show.
That's what I do.
But certainly, we are looking to stay around with the next administration if that's something that the next mayor desires. But you know, we understand that this is an appointed position, and the realities of being appointed is you're appointed by the mayor.
And I'm sure you told that the previous guest on who potentially could be mayor, you told them you're ready to stick around?
I shook both of their hands and, you know, made sure to get their business cards.
Good deal. Omar Reed, congratulations.
Thank
on what's
you,
been happening. It's
Cambrell.
good to see you again.
Good to see you too,
Try
my
not to
friend.
dress better than the host next time, okay?
I had a standard to keep up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. Good luck to you as you continue to save the city money.
Thank you, Cambrell.
But just ahead, children are dying in our community. Many times it appears that adults are at fault. The tough times for our youngest and most precious, and what we all can do about it with the help of the Escape Family Resource Center. That's next when Houston Newsmakers continues.
KPRC Channel 2. This is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
Well, once again last week we watched as a terrible scene unfolded outside a Houston area home. A child got a hold of a gun and shot himself in the head. That child later died, making it even more tragic as we can only imagine the anguish now being felt by the grandparents who were caring for that child and the parents and extended family. My guest this morning makes it her life's work to help parents avoid any situation where the child they're caring for is at risk. Lydia Sachi is the CEO of the Escape Family Resource Center. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
I noticed on your website, it says you strive every day to teach, motivate, and inspire parents and children to create stable family environments. The word stable family environment, that's a huge component of what you do, isn't it?
Absolutely. What we teach parents and children, and that's the uniqueness of Escape Family Resource Center, that all our curricula is written for parents and children ages 3 to 18, where we break them according to their developmental stages, and they're learning the same. If we're teaching parents how to recognize stress and what to do about it, because sometimes we behave in less than honorable ways when we are under stress, we teach children about their worries and how to enunciate them. So instead of screaming and yelling, they can tell you, I'm worried, I'm upset, I'm mad. And on and on and on. Listening with your heart, speaking without judgment, how to discipline without ever resorting to violence. Safety at home.
That must be incredibly empowering for a young child to have that kind of ability to know that they can help diffuse the situation when they learn those kind of techniques.
Oh, absolutely. Both parents and children tell us, and again, if you could hear our walls speak, you will hear thousands of testimonies where the children will tell you, oh, mom didn't whoop me for a week. Dad gets on his knees and listens to me. They're learning that just by tweaking their behavior, they change the whole atmosphere, dynamics with their children.
What's your biggest challenge when you see the kinds of things as we saw last week with the child being killed? What does that do to you and your agency? Because you know there's so many people you can help.
Sure.
You try to get that word out.
Well, there are several things. Now, in terms of corporal punishing and beating, we read that story about the mother hurting her 2 boys. We don't know what mentally is happening there, but very often parents raise their children like they were parented, and if they were whooped and hurt and really sometimes very, very badly punished, very often without education at Escape Family Resource Center, they wouldn't know any different, especially when they are in the high stress situation. But in the situation, in this tragedy with the 3-year-old, we tell our parents, and actually safety at home is one of our classes, we dedicate the entire class to that, safety at home, is whenever there are children around, you have to conjure the worst possible scenario. What will happen if? What will happen if a child walks in? Are the knives away? Is the pool locked up? Are the guns, whatever the children can do? Are the plasma TVs attached to the walls? So you have to be constantly on top of your game when the children are around, and that means preventive thinking, and that's what we tell our children, and parents. Children don't touch anything without permission, but parents, lock it up. Lock it up. Think think in advance, be preventive.
I noticed that one of the other things that your website talked about is that how violence impacts a child at an early age. I mean, they inherit neurologically the violence that's around them, really affects them and impacts them.
Very good point, precisely. When we teach our parents, we teach them about brain health. What happens early on if the children don't experience attachment and loving kindness and empathy? It does affect the brain, even more so in the case with those two boys who were tortured consistently in the home with other children. There is a secondary effect on those girls who see their brothers being so adversely mistreated. Imagine what's happening to them. Is it normal? What's going to happen to them? How they're going to be developing?
Wouldn't it be nice if parents who needed help would know they needed help? And so the challenge is to get those parents to get help. What advice do you give to anybody who's watching to reach out and try to get the kind of help that you need?
Well, first of all, every parent could be a better parent. And so how do you do it? You learn. So we, for example, more than 80% of our clients at Escape come to us voluntarily, recognizing that they shouldn't be waiting until there is a crisis to come in and learn, right? Second, everyone who's contemplating to be a parent, a grandparent, need to learn that it's 21st century and there are some issues are very different for the children.
And we have the information on the website. Very easy for you to contact them. The Escape Family Resource Center, the website, learntoparent.org. Very easy, learntoparent.org. Great information from that, or call them, 713-942-9500. I'll have that on my website as well. Lydia, always good to see you. Thank you. You guys do great work. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Our final thoughts, and a big reason to go to BBVA at Compass Stadium tonight. Here's a big hint. Go! Now, tonight at BBVA Compass Stadium, sure to be a big welcome home crowd for the Houston Dash, especially for Carly Lloyd, who along with Dash teammates Megan Klingenberg and Morgan Bryan were part of the victorious U.S. women's soccer team that won the Women's World Cup last Sunday. Carly scored 3 goals, was named best player in the tournament, now is back as a part of the Houston Dash as they host the Chicago Red Stars. They needed your support before, they definitely need it now. Game time, 7:30. Have a great day. I'll see you back here next week. Go Houston Dash.